Hello, welcome everybody. Pink Cloud Radio 75. Whether I've digested everything right or wrong, I can't really, go to those conclusions, I guess, for this. Like I've heard before, I know how to run things, but I'm not a thing. That's the difference when someone says something like that. So, if you know how to run things, at some point, you just let go, And I think that's one way to develop a relationship with somebody. Figure out that. See what they think of that. See what they think of how they treat somebody without knowing it sometimes. Because some people don't know how they act. Don't know how they'll tell somebody something. And because of that, it makes it pretty easy to be like, well, that's funny, laughing at something, but never actually doing it. And I think that's really what this one's about. Because it's like, if something like that happens, whose fault is it? Especially with something like that, it's a little different. You don't just all of a sudden one day decide that. And I think that's the difference between what has happened so far. I know how to run things, but that's just a statement, And I think really that really comes from almost everything that has happened. If you say one thing and then lead with that, maybe it's something you've always done. You can't. I don't think you can really hide something like that, for one. I think if you've been in that same position for a long time, it's pretty easy to get out of it. Like for someone like me, where I wouldn't be involved with it, and it's been done so many times, If I wanted somebody controlling, I'd ask for it. If I wanted somebody controlled, I'd ask for it, But it's easier to step over that tide, like if it was like waves coming in, like a tide, I could step over that, I'm hungry for something more than that. And it's hard for others to grasp that, because most people are brought up in the society with money and everything else. But it's how they think about that money. It's how they think about, what that money means. That's one of the major issues right there. Once you use money in a certain way to make you think differently, you could say, I know how to run things, but how exactly do you run things? Do you run it for the well-being, or do you run it for just getting the most out of it yourself? That doesn't really mean much, If you know how to run things, doesn't mean you're running it the right way. So either I'm the worst person you ever met, or the best person you ever kept. 0 or a million. I talked about this before, but it's true, Not trying to say something bad when I say I'm the worst person you ever met. Either I'm that. To me that really means that you just don't like the personality I have, and you wanted to change it. You wanted to try to do something with it. And there's, to me, that's like when people say about cheating on a relationship. That's cheating on a relationship right there. If you can't see better than that, or if you are looking just to change that, or get some kind of empathy out of me for your struggle. It makes sense to want those things, but make sure you have it too. Make sure you have that empathy for yourself, and make sure you have that want to change for yourself too. If you're asking for some more help, that's understandable. But if you've never used it yourself, sorry. To me, that's where I step out of the picture, because I could never. That's like forcing somebody, and then they use it against you. Because if a person doesn't have that, that's what I mean by being the worst person you ever met. Because you're asking for something that you don't have for yourself. So how do I know your reaction? Your reaction was probably worse for yourself But still, it's going to get worse for me, because now that you don't have it and you're not using it for yourself, well, what am I going to get out of this? Nothing. I'm only going to get you being, one, possibly acting like you're tortured, which, right there and then, that's bad in itself. Sorry about that. Or, the best person you ever kept. It's true. Or the best person you ever kept. Yeah. Because you would be able to keep me at that point. If I'm the best person you ever met. If I'm the best person, then you would keep me, most likely. Unless you don't really want the best person. Not being used to something is one thing. But wanting something else out of somebody, that's when you know it's over. And that's what I knew with what had happened in past relationship, and what I'm realizing I have to do now with everything. Like, somebody could, wave their wings at me and, slap me with their wings. But, at a certain point, I can't let them do that anymore. Meaning, I can't let them get close in any form, It's like a locust swarm. You can't let that locust swarm get close to you. And if that means, being treated badly, yes, of course. And I think that's what really is the whole point. Because it's like saying that those kind of beliefs about, being the worst or the best count for something. Because you wouldn't have to really think about it in that way. Unless you've thought about it in one way and the other. And I think that's what really is the problem right there, is that if you're thinking in those terms, it doesn't necessarily make you right, And I think that's the one thing that I've learned. It's hard to learn it that way, because then you don't really have any kind of structure to go to or go with, That what matters to you may just be the fact that you have that kind of control. Or have that kind of power. It's a 0 or a million shot. But the thing is, to me it's either 0 or a million. It's not a shot. It's either it's gonna work, or it's not. It's not really thinking about it in two sides, because I don't think about it in that way, where it's like, either it's good or bad. Not really, not necessarily. But at a certain point with certain things, you can't really ask more. You can't. If you could, you probably wouldn't get anything out of it. Just to be honest, you wouldn't. And I think that's the difference right there. Is that if you're trying to use something to predict or give you an answer to something else, then you're kind of using, you're using somebody as a thing, really. You're not using them for who they are, really. Because if you were, you wouldn't be asking for that kind of help, for one. Because you wouldn't want to use that kind of help knowing that you could get something much better or in a better way than just, that. And I think that's the difference too, is that seeing that you can use somebody as a thing can really show off the kind of person you are. I mean, it's sad though that people would do that, but it does happen, And I think that's what I meant by, not being a thing. Because I'm not, When I mean, the worst person you ever met, that pretty much says it all. You'll remember me, for sure, if I am that, and that's nice, that you'll remember me because you just don't get along with me, or you don't get along with the fact that I'm not getting along with you the way you want me to. But that may include you being a bitch, and this could be in any, guy or girl or whatever. It doesn't need to be one or the other. This is about friendships, this is about relationships, this is about everything. Either you're being a bitch about, saying that this person has to think like I do. Sorry. If you're looking for me to put you down for what you think, I'm not going to do that. But if you're looking for somebody to think exactly like you think, I'm sorry, can't do that. Apologize for that, but that won't happen. I never was brought up to believe that I had to be like somebody else just to make them happy. Even my grandmother, I don't do too. And I don't. She gets tired, because, oh, Marcello, you make me so tired. up and down with that, really, myself, because I don't really think of it the same way. And I think that's the difference too, is that a lot of people would try to instigate certain they would try to instigate certain beliefs and make you just believe them. Like, even with what you already have. Like, somebody could say something about my mom, the relationship I have with my mom. But to be fair, if they truly knew me, they would know that me and my mom, as I've said many times before, my mom is happy if I'm with anybody, as long as she knows I'm not being hurt. Makes sense to me. And it doesn't sound bad, And, anybody else can say anything what the fuck they want, To me, I think that's the main issue that I've seen, is that a lot of people base who you are on what other people say in your families. And that's not true. It doesn't mean that you believe the same things they do. Yes, you're involved with them. You have to be. You have no choice, and that, into a certain extent. But it doesn't mean that you think the same way they do about everybody. I talk about it all the time. How, for example, my grandma would say about Maury, Steve Wilkos, watching those shows and just looking at everybody outside of the world that way. That's the way they want to be. Well, I'm not going to look at everybody else. I'm not going to look at everybody the same way if that's the effect, Because I think that makes something worse than what is already there. We're looking at something bad. Why are you going to look more negative towards everything? But that's how I think. It doesn't mean that I don't look at that negative and see it. It's there. But I'm not going to change to negative because of it. That's the difference. I don't need to be stupid enough to get rid of who I am as a person just because everybody else's credibility and inability to step forward can really show. They already don't step forward, so I'm going to step forward with myself. Even if it means like, oh, well, you might fall into traps with other people. You know what? Traps don't work. Traps don't work if you're not doing a trap yourself. That's a real fact. So if somebody tries to say you're just a thing to me, and, not saying it, but they're trying to get you in that way where they could keep you, it doesn't work. I'll be the worst person you ever met at that point, because you'll never get close to me. Most likely because you didn't want to be honest. You didn't want to be honest about the fact that you wanted that kind of power over me. You wanted to hide it behind, being a nice friend, being a nice person, and then all of a sudden, whammo. Well, then you're gone. You don't need me here, and I think that's one of the main issues that I see within, like, what people say about governments and stuff, that, all government, the government's so stupid, they wouldn't be able to do all those conspiracies, so, I don't really believe that's impossible. Because once you believe something's impossible, at least in the form of humans doing something bad to others, it's probably the most possible solution. They probably did it all. Even worse than that, We're handicapped, sadly, with the fact that we actually let our governments have secrets and lie, basically. Because by letting governments have secrets, you basically let the government lie to everybody. Let's say it's not about you, but it is, actually, because they're keeping secrets from you, too. They're not keeping secrets from the whole world. What's the old saying? It's in the public interest. It's in the public interest. Oh, yes, one of my favorite lines. No, it's not. It's for your interest. If it's for the public interest, the only thing that makes it a public interest is the fact that most people can't deal with the huge, harsh repercussions. Having to look at it in that defined state. That, my God, this is what my government does. There you go. This is what people do. And it wouldn't be a lie, because you wouldn't need to worry about public interest if everybody knew everything. Because especially if everybody knows everything and that's the way it should go, then people wouldn't be frightened by it. They would know that, that's okay to do. Maybe it's not okay to do what they're doing then. If you have to hide some things based on the fact of public interest, then public wouldn't be the public interest wouldn't be in a place where they would be interested. The main reasons why they do keep things away from the public is mostly because so the public can't be interested in something that they release. The only things they're going to release are the things that are a nice Hollywood factory, the dream world of cinema of politics. There you go. You know, people are willing to sacrifice a relationship just so that they don't have to deal with the problems. It's true. It's true, sadly. A lot of people are willing to sacrifice a relationship just to not deal with the problems. That's what happened in my past one. But it was due to the fact that, you know, when you have abuse in your relationships before, or you have abuse in a relationship between your families, or something like that, something more close to home, especially at home, you can do that easily because you're willing to sacrifice a relationship now because you're used to the relationships you got. So you wouldn't feel like, well, I don't feel bad because of that. One, you could defend it by saying that, well, I didn't want that person involved in this kind of shit. Gave them the easy way out, so to speak. And just so that you don't have to deal with the problems right there. That's it. You already have enough problems dealing with the abuse itself. So now you don't have to deal with the fact that somebody who doesn't abuse you, it's going to be hard to integrate somebody else into that when you already have the abuse right there. And I think that's the difference, is that anybody can use that, again, you know, for their own benefit right there. See, that's the thing though. If you're doing things based on for your own benefit of what you already got between yourself and whoever is around you before you got into this other relationship, then you're not willing to sacrifice anything for a relationship. You never would be. You're willing to sacrifice everything for what you already have. It's like, for me, for example, would I completely defend my grandmother's views? No. Would I see through her lies? If she, for example, said something like, you know, oh, all women are the same, all people are the same, you know, I would say, well, that's how you feel. And you have a right to feel that way. And I can agree that a lot of people, you know, want to change people, but don't have enough empathy for themselves, so they always ask for the other empathy. But it doesn't mean they're going to be happy when they get it. A lot of times they hate it. They hate seeing that truth, and they leave. That's what happened with me in my friendships and stuff. A lot of people just left. They wanted that empathy, but once you gave it to them, once you were totally upfront with them, they didn't like it because they don't do it to themselves. They're not upfront with themselves. So right there is the same thing as what I just said about sacrificing in your relationship. If you're willing to sacrifice in a relationship for what you already have, so you don't have to deal with the problem, then you never dealt with what the problems were, even the ones that you already had by yourself. Not even looking at the fact that those people are abusive around you. That doesn't matter. At a certain point you have to deal with who you are. Because obviously somebody who's abusive towards you is not going to be there by your side and go, well, let me help you with this. Doesn't seem like they're the type of person to do that if they're abusive. But I think that's the issue right there, is that people, you know, right now my head's swirling in circles and going every single direction because I can feel the kind of distortion that would give to somebody. But it doesn't matter. If you want to have that distortion go away, the only way you can do that is basically dealing with it. You don't need anybody else to deal with it for you. And you wouldn't want those kind of people who are abusive to deal with it for you, because all they're going to do is put you down. You already know that. You know, there's enough cyclone of self-depreciation everywhere. How about just dealing with it? Because pretty much it's the only way you're going to get anywhere closer to what you need to do. Sometimes it's the fact that you have to leave that whole thing. Sometimes. Sometimes it's that you would have to move along in life without, you know, looking for something else to get from what you got. You know, and it's the same thing with, you know, the relationships. A lot of times the relationship that you are willing to just sacrifice because you don't deal with the problems. Well, the main thing you would do, as most people would do, sadly, is that you would blame the other person. You would automatically scathe them for having the guts to actually ask you how you feel. You wouldn't like that because you don't want to answer for yourself. You don't want to answer for the fact that you don't want to deal with the problems. That you don't want to tell that person your true feelings. You're not willing to sacrifice, you know, that. And I think that's the difference too, is that, and when I look at like best friendships and stuff, see right there, you can never say you were a best friend to somebody if you're not willing to tell them the truth. because if I was going to use it against you, would have done that a long time ago. But I think that's the difference between what people want to see and what people have seen. So like, they'll see what they see and what has been going on. Like me, for example, being close to a couple friends and being with one. The kind of thing that came out of that was that anybody can use it against you then, in that relationship. They can use it and say, oh, well, he should have known better than to get close with that one there. But it doesn't matter that I did or didn't, because at that point, it became, like I said, not wanting to deal with the problems. Okay, well, first things first, I would never understand that there was any problems, ever. Because at that point, you basically shown that there was not a problem at all. The only problem was you didn't want to say how you feel, but that didn't matter because it's my fault. So right there, and I think that's an important thing to look at too, is that that's one thing that a lot of people don't want to face. They don't want to face the repercussions of something, so they try to put the blame on somebody else, but that goes back to them anyway. There's nothing I have to face because of it, because if it isn't my fault, what am I going to face? Nothing. I'm going to face your wrath, but nobody else's. Who else's wrath can I face? Other people will be upset because I made my own choice, but people are upset about people when they make up their own choices anyway. So there you go, being independent in that form. I'm not talking about being... See, because a lot of people try to use the fact that you live with your parents or you live with somebody and they think they own you outright to what you choose to do. Nope, And I think the best defense for that is the fact that you weren't there every single day at school where I went in to classes every day. I had to make my decisions there. You weren't there by my side every single second. So you don't know exactly how I am. You can pick it up all you want. You could say all you want. I've had most experiences because I'm older. I'm a person who has a long time on life. That doesn't matter. That really doesn't matter because you've already said that the world's different now. So your experiences add up to shit. And it does. It adds up to shit. Now, if I wanted to totally disrespect that and throw it to the ground, I don't. But I think it's a pretty useless statement to try to cite the kind of value you should have. When one by one you could see the differences. I could never answer the same way as you. Not because I'm too scared or too afraid to or fearful of it, of being direct with others. No, I've been the exact same direct as I have been with you. Which means that there are different answers other people can give me. They're not going to look at it the same way. They're not going to be as interested as you and want to keep talking about it. Or they're not going to be as interested as you and try to invest and understand it. They wouldn't. They would think of that as a waste and say, well, I don't believe this person, and get pissed off and leave. That honesty is not going to be a friendly friend to them. And I think that's one thing that really works there, or doesn't. But gang members and police officers use the same tactics of intimidation, power, control. One is praised and one is hated. Though technically, if we really look at it, the reason we have these problems in this world right now is the fact that we don't hate. Well, technically we don't do both of these. When somebody's put on trial, for example, that is killed and murdered, we don't really have a nice, well, I could forgive this person kind of attitude. But to be fair, we should. Because if we want to solve things by doing the exact same thing to the same people that have done it, what's going to solve? Nothing. It's not going to bring back that person. And I think that's the one thing that really hits hard with a lot of people. They would never forgive certain people. They'd never forgive them. Then maybe it wasn't their fault that happened. Maybe you not being able to forgive didn't just start here. And maybe if you did forgive at some point before this, maybe this wouldn't happen. I'm not saying that it's that person's fault, because sometimes people go out and kill just to kill. They don't have any rhyme or reason, and innocent or guilty people can be killed, because a lot of people have been killed on both ends of the spectrum, We could label it and say that person was innocent. In what way? If we believe that humans are always in sin, technically nobody's innocent. So right there, we're trying to value up what we never value in the first place. What does it matter that that person was innocent? You know, there's a lot of people who've been innocent and been killed, yet we believe that they were killed by people who, you know, went crazy. That's it. You know, we don't believe that it could be much more than that, but we see it every day. So I think in a lot of ways, it's funny that what I just said about gang members and police officers, all these gang sweeps and stuff, they're the exact same reason for police officers to be intimidating, to use the same exact tactic as gang members have been using. I mean, it's the same thing that happened between mobs and banks. Mobs and all the things that happened way back when. Basically, the banks became the mobs. That's it, you know. But at least when the mobs were around, I could go to the police, I could go to somebody and get help. Now I can't do that. Banks are in control of everything. So now it's the same thing with police officers and gangs. They want to sweep out all the gangs because they want to be the gangs. You know, I mean, when you have power over somebody, it's not like you're going to do something good all the time. Most of the time you won't, in fact. And I think that's what I've seen between what, you know, if you want to create a good mentality between people, you don't just say, well, let me do it this way. Let me act in a way where I have to intimidate somebody to get my right away. You know, and if you're stepping into bounds where you think you're right by doing something, but maybe you're completely off. You don't have any facts to back it up. You have no evidence. Your only evidence is what you see. And the story you make up when you get there. That's what most police officers do now, sadly. But that's how they've been doing it for years, probably. Especially the ones that have been caught, you know, being abusive towards people, attacking people that are doing victimless crimes. You know, right there, just that show of strength shows that all these people are in the same realm. It's not like they're, it's like being, you know, it's like that goodness, whether or not you did it for goodness, may not be there. You know, a lot of times people do things because they've been cheated, so they want to cheat other people. I mean, look at the biggest institutions, look at the biggest corporations, look at the biggest people in high positions. They're not there for, you know, personal wealth, and that's it. Whether we like it or not, there's a bigger story behind that. Look at what Brzezinski has been saying. Although it's double talk, because it means that, you know, all these protests and everything, the way people's consciousness are changing, it's going to be harder for them to stay in power. No, it's not. It's double talk. It means that it's going exactly to plan. You wouldn't be able to come and speak in front of people about it if it wasn't working out your way. It means that this guy's a liar. So much a liar that he'll costume the fact that they're winning. Because they want to be able to win without anybody else seeing it. But it's too late. You've already been seen. You know, it's the wolf in sheep's clothing. But, you know, when you're able to get off that, you know, when you're able to shave off the wolf, the sheepskin, you can see every wolf. You know, and I think that's what the issue is right there. Is that people don't want to be noticed. So they try to act as if everything's fine. Or they bring it up as if everything's not fine. So that people will believe that and not look at the fact that everything's going exactly to plan. And I think that's what it means to be gang members and police officers. Using the same tactics, like I said, of intimidation, power, control. You know. And what I mean by one is praised and one is hated is that this is the same thing that kind of happened back with slavery almost. You had people run away. And they were hated by all the other slaves because, you know, it's like they were turning their backs on them. And I think that's what I've seen now with gangs and police officers. Especially since a lot of gangs have been, you know, there's been a lot of gang sweeps and everything. When I look at gangs, I don't really see them as intimidating. I don't. If they want to do their own thing, do your own thing. I leave them alone, they leave me alone, I don't see any problem. But police officers don't act that same way. Police officers don't just leave you alone. I'm not talking about breaking laws or anything, I'm talking about generally. They look out for everybody. But that's the problem. Why I don't really see that same result from gang members. I'd rather have gang members around because at least gang members don't look at every single damn person. They ignore you if you're not doing anything. They ignore you if you're not doing anything to them directly. That sounds pretty good, you know? And I think that's the difference, is that police can do that. They can turn on anybody. They can turn on anybody, even if that person has not done a single thing wrong. They can make up a story in their head before they get there. But that says a lot more about the kind of person they are. It says a lot more about their instincts and their guts. Their gut feeling is to treat everybody bad. You know, it's the old saying of like, I don't trust any of these people right here. You know, and I think doing that, not trusting, is one of the main issues that I've seen. And it's a bad thing to not trust, because once you say you don't trust anybody, why would I want you to be a police officer? You know, I just thought about that like for a while there. That why would I want somebody to be a police officer if they don't trust anybody? Because they're going to show that not trust. They're going to show that they don't trust anybody, especially with what they do to people that are innocent. And in a lot of ways, that's the problem. Most people wouldn't even think about it, but that's one of the main issues that I've seen, is that most people would kind of, I don't know, it's hard for them to really speak about it because it's so much to look at, especially with police officers, how they've kind of been throughout the years, is that it's different for each one, it's different for each person, but it may end up in the same thing, you know. And it has, you know. I think most of the gang sweeps are just so that they can take more power over. I'm talking about police here. That they can do whatever the fuck they want. And I think that's the one thing that I'm going to see in my world, sadly, is that a lot of police officers will do that. They'll just try to end up being the ones who frame the most people who aren't doing a single damn thing, that, you know, that are speaking up, speaking their own voice. But that's not good. You can't do that in this world. And I think that's what the main issue that I've seen is that a lot of people try to say, like, you know, just shut up and be happy with what you get. Well, that's like saying that, you know, everything that we asked for has been completed here. But it hasn't, you know. Most of this stuff we never even asked for. I'm not talking about technology, I'm talking about what's happening with the answers to everything. Never asked for any of this. But I think that's what made it easy for a lot of people to take over, to use police officers, which is overseers pretty much, just like when slaves were around. That's what it means. And that's where they got the name from. And using that kind of intimidation or thought process really makes it easy for a lot of police officers to do that. It's not very difficult to, you know, have a huge amount of support and just do whatever the hell you want with it. You know, Kelly Thomas, Rodney King. You already have a ton of different things that have happened. I think, yeah, that's Rodney King, or I messed up the name right there, but sorry about that. I don't think I did, but anyway, looking at it that way, you can't really get a complete answer out of everybody through that. You know, you can look at it and say, oh, well, you know, they'll be able to get away with it. But once you see that kind of corruption, would you ever fight against what those people do? Probably not. See, that's the difference. You wouldn't be able to. Who can you go to if the police officers are being corrupt? Nobody. Your government's more corrupt than that. The government's more corrupt than that. So, if the police officers are doing it, they took it from the same stone that the government has been doing. All these shootings where people just go out to kill have to always have some reason. People are willing to avoid being honest to the point they will lose their lives to not deal with their problems. It's true. You know, with all these shootings, you know, there could be some truth to some of them, but also there has to be some reason, you know, and sometimes it's because most people won't work with their own problems that other people go crazy, because we're kind of based on the fact of a system, sadly, that's based on what other people do. And if other people aren't willing to deal with the problems, that could turn anybody else crazy. But people don't want to admit that. That part is hard to admit because it's then a kind of fault that is going everywhere. It's not just the fault of that person. It's the fault of many people that didn't want to do anything, didn't want to deal with anything. And because of that, and a lot of people say, like, maybe they were surrounded by the wrong kind of people. Doesn't matter. The wrong kind of people kept that person around, obviously. Where maybe it's not about being surrounded by the wrong kind of people, but if they don't value that person, there you go. And especially if nobody is valued in that, as with people in general, a lot of people are pretty not valuing people. So right there you got some reason to avoid being honest. Because if you have to be like everybody else, what if you are and you don't like it? It's true, There has to be some reason. And sometimes those are the reasons to groupthink, the reasons to be in the majority. Those are the reasons that a lot of people use to get answers from. But that's the thing. That can never answer for everything. Although a lot of people would like it to. Just to get the upper hand. Just to get the upper hand. Sadly, a lot of people do things to just get the upper hand. I wish I could say more about it, or less, I guess. But sadly, a lot of people do things for that reason alone. Because to certain people, it counts more to be in that, support system of, I guess you could say, being in that upper hand. It's hard to do, because it's not for everybody. And sadly, a lot of people kinda, as I said, are honest, avoid being honest to the point that they will lose their lives to not deal with their problems, And a lot of people do that, A lot of people these days will lose their lives just so that they don't have to deal with their problems. I never understood when other people went out to go shootings and shoot other people too, to take them with them. Why would you want to take anybody that's from here on Earth with you? Just my personal belief on, committing suicide or anything like that. I have a hard time believing that you want to keep anybody around that's like them. It's true, though. It's true, There could be many reasons, though. Could be the fact that the parents are being assholes too there, and that they're not going to make their kids grow up well. There could be a ton of different reasons. Sadly, you can never look at that to justify anything, because what you have to look at is that kid going to take it all? Maybe not. I didn't. I didn't take what my grandma and mom taught me all the way, because if I did, one, I would probably be bitter like my grandma about helping people and not getting anything in return. Two, I probably would have done the exact same thing as my mom and looked for escape and security and ended up losing in the end and still looking bitter or looking badly at the fact that, I waited for the one never came. No. I didn't do either of those. And my brother, on the other hand, stepped up and did his own thing, And a lot of people just, dislike him for it, dislike him for his honesty so much more and looking at everything and tangibly seeing it and talking about it. And a lot of people don't like seeing that emphasis, because once you deal with these struggles that people don't want to, that people want to continue to keep on doing the same thing, it doesn't mean that same thing is actually good for everybody. Because once you do that, you're not looking for the answer from that person. You could say it like this. Let's say my brother takes acknowledgement of something that he sees. He talks about it, but that other person that he's talking about just asks the other person who's in the room, is that true? Well, first off, you shouldn't be doing that. You're talking to one person, you're not talking to two. If a person wanted you to ask them, they would have asked themselves. But they're asking you. They're talking with you. And I think that's a big avoiding part right there. The avoiding of dealing with problems. Easiest way to avoid dealing with problems, ask somebody else. Is it true? Is that true? Do I do that? How do you avoid problems? There you go. But see, a problem is bigger than what you think. And I think that's the one thing that I've seen in this generation of humans. Is that, the government avoids problems. I can too. The police avoid problems. I can too. Doesn't make you good people. And it actually shows how much this empire is exactly the same as the Roman one. It shows the exact same prospects in every single little thing. Even at the most individual level of a family. Doing the exact same thing shows how much we're exactly like that. Shows how much they're lying to us every single day. So, right there and then, your defense of it shows more of that your integrity is worth shit. Your respect is worth shit. Because it doesn't mean shit if you're going to do if you're going to treat this the polar opposite of it. And say, no, I don't want to deal with that problem. Well, I can't give it to you. It's just like I said earlier. I can never give somebody empathy. That never did it to themselves. They never gave it to themselves. It doesn't work that way. Most people would hate you for it because you're being honest with them. Here's your empathy. But it's my empathy, so sadly I can never give you your empathy because you have to do that. And, it's the same thing with trying to change. I would never change for somebody. And that's where, right there, out of the loop. You won't change for me? Okay, bye. Good. Bye. Because I don't need to be around somebody who's completely gonna, double the standard of what they don't want to change of themselves. Not asking me. Like, what do I need to change? No, you should already know what you need to change. Because you should be the one looking at yourself. If you're only going to concentrate on everybody else, you're not looking for anything else for yourself. Why not? You should be. You should always be. I think it's important to. Because you can't just litter yourself with the constants of everybody else's life around you because other people don't think the same way you do. I don't. So if you're going to look at me for answers like that, I can't give them to you. You have to look at that yourself because you have your own mind. If you're not willing to put your mind into something that matters like yourself, I can't do that for you because you would never value it as much as it came from you alone. And that's for any of you out there. That's why I never have put myself in a picture where I had to, oh, you're the man, you gotta put, be in control. No, thank you. I would never say that to a woman either, because to me that's where the main problem is that a person can do that, a human can do that, and it doesn't fix anything. And I think that's where, just to get the upper hand, that's all we do. I don't need an upper hand. All I need is my own hands. That's it. My own hands is good enough. Don't need to get the upper hand. Never needed it. And I think that's where I'll end today, in this whole thing. But take care all, and love to all of you, and we'll continue this next week as always.